Welcome to Creating Your Professional Identity, the 3 Keys to Success. I'm Donna Lampke, and with 2 national certifications in resume writing and over 20 years of clinical experience as a physical therapist, I'm uniquely qualified to help you create and polish your professional identity. In this webinar, you will learn about the current standards for career documentation and how to create your own resume, curriculum vitae, otherwise known as a CV, and a social media presence. You will discover when to use a resume versus a CV, and you will also increase your understanding of the impact of social media on your professional identity. Creating your professional identity can definitely help you stand out from the crowd. Although the number of healthcare jobs continues to grow, the dirty little secret is that the number of new grads surpasses that job growth. You also need to factor in the low rate of attrition for healthcare providers to get the clear picture of why the job market for healthcare professionals is so very competitive. There are jobs out there, but you have to be on the top of your game in this job market. It's imperative to be able to stand out from the crowd, and you can do that by enhancing your professional identity. So what is your professional identity? It is how managers, human resource departments, colleagues, and the public perceive you. The documents that support your professional identity are your resume, your curriculum vitae, known as your CV, and your LinkedIn profile. Let's start with that most familiar career document, your resume. Remember that a resume is a marketing tool. It's where instead of telling your story, you're actually selling your story. Resumes have changed a lot in the last 5 to 10 years. It's almost dizzying to keep up with it all, and that's coming from someone with extensive training in writing career documents. No wonder you feel confused. In a nutshell, the information in this webinar is what I'd like you to know about resumes and your other career documents. One of my goals is to help you begin to understand what you truly need to do as you create all of them. One of the reasons that you see so much conflicting information about resume standards is because there are no rules. There are only guidelines. Each of us have a unique set of circumstances that makes one-size-fits-all resumes impractical. The challenge is to specifically explain to a hiring manager why you are the person for that one particular job. In the past, resumes have generally been one page for new grads and those with less than 10 years of experience. This is no longer the case. Resumes need to be however long they need to be to convey your information. You do want to limit them to no more than 2 pages, if at all possible, though. Objective statements are old school and have been replaced with summary statements or summary headlines. Hiring managers are not interested in what you want out of a job as much as they are interested in whether you are qualified for the job. Make sure that you omit any personal information that would allow you to accuse an employer of prejudice. I've seen many a resume thrown out with a photograph attached because employers do not want to be accused of profiling. You also need to know that the applicant tracking system is a real factor in your application process. You will hear me refer to the applicant tracking system as the ATS. We'll talk about the ATS more in a little bit. You also want to know that while you absolutely do need your career documents, if you're applying through a job board, only 5% of job board applicants actually get a call back. So networking is truly the best. You need to remember that people hire people. Your best bet is to get your career documents in front of the hiring manager. Although it is very confusing to try and get accurate information on how to create your career documents, hopefully all this information will give you a jump start in preparing yourself for the job search. Let's start with the basics. What fonts, margins, and styles do you need for your resume? The fonts that work best for your resume are Calibri, Verdana, Garamond, Georgia, Cambria, and Helvetica. You don't want to use Times Roman. It's definitely old school and doesn't seem up to date to hiring managers. You want your margins to be between 0.6 and 1.0. Your type size should be between 10 to 12 depending upon your font style. Remember also to incorporate appropriate white space in your resume to make it easier on the eyes to read. There are a number of reasons why resumes have changed so much over the last 5 to 10 years, and how we now read is a big factor in that. Because we have acclimated to reading digitally, our brains require different stimulation to remain interested in subject matter. We've become used to reading in quick bites and bullet points, and today's resumes reflect this. This study by the career website The Ladders is evidence of why appropriate use of white space and readability is important. Notice how the old school resume on the left loses the reader. It is not visually interesting. So you want to keep this in mind as you create your resume. While looking at the one on the right, you can see from the eye scanning techniques that they use that the resume has kept the reader's interest all the way down, and that the old school one, they basically quit reading. It's just not as visually appealing. There are 3 different types of resumes. The first is the chronological, which is basically listing your most recent employer and then working backwards from that. The second is the functional resume. And to be truthful, when a hiring manager sees a functional resume, they generally see a red flag. This format is used by someone with a career gap or something that they're trying to hide in their career history. A functional resume is more about what skills you have and what your achievements are versus your actual career history. I actually prefer the hybrid, which is a combination of the chronological and the functional. The top 1/3 of your resume can really focus and grab the hiring manager's attention if you've listed out your branding statement and some of your top achievements. It's then followed by your chronological information. The hybrid combination is the one that I think is the best and that I use the most often. So what needs to be included in your resume? Well, the givens are obviously your name and credentials and contact information. Your name should be the one that you're called. It sounds friendlier, and employers tend to want to hire friendly people. Only use one phone number, have a professional sounding email address, nothing cutesy or provocative, and lose the AOL for your email address. That ages you. The specific title of the job that you're applying for should be immediately after your contact information, and that needs to be followed by your branding statement, whether that is a headline or a brief paragraph. I like to then include 3 to 4 career highlights, followed by 8 to 10 core competencies, which will help you with placing keywords for the applicant tracking system in your resume. The next header should be your professional experience, which is where you list your positions, the companies you've worked for, and your dates of employment. Briefly, as in 1 to 2 sentences, describe your job responsibilities, and then with bullet points, add 3 to 5 accomplishments or achievements that have set you apart from your colleagues. Of note, if you're a student or a new grad, the education header will come after your branding statement and core competencies. All others will put your work experience, and lastly, have your educational experience. Your licensure and credentials should follow after your work experience, and then that's followed by the educational details. There are additional components that can be included in your resume if they're pertinent to the job that you're applying for. If they're not pertinent, leave them off. Never include references or personal details that would allow hiring managers to be accused of discrimination. Again, this is why I recommend that you do not include your photograph. Let's discuss your branding statement in a little more detail. Basically, it is the 30-second pitch that would summarize you to a hiring manager and let them know why you're the best person for the job. A lot of times it is described as your elevator pitch. There are a lot of resources online that will help you to develop this if you're stuck. Always remember that your resume is a marketing document. You need to sell it instead of tell it, as I've already said. One of the tools that helps me as I create a resume is to think about the CAR technique. Basically, you start with a challenge that you've faced in your work, and then you describe the action that you took to get results. You need to think in terms of your successes and your achievements. The example here is that the challenge was that the department had low satisfaction scores, and the action they took was participate in a committee that coached staff, and the result was that the scores improved by 26.4%. So looking at this statement, participated in committee to improve customer satisfaction scores by coaching staff. It's definitely a bland, passive statement compared to this one, which is improved customer satisfaction scores more than 26% by coaching staff on best communication practices. So you can see that by doing the challenge, action, and result format, you have a much more eye-catching statement. As healthcare providers, we tend to be team players, and it can be difficult to quantify individual achievements sometimes. You can refer to accomplishments that you've achieved as part of a committee or a team, so include those as well. Once you have your resume completed, you will need to have it available in several formats. You should have your resume ready to go in a Word doc format, a text-only format, and as a PDF. You always want to supply your resume in the format that hiring managers are requesting. If you take a look in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, you will see an example of a text resume. This is the type of resume you would upload into a company's website. The Word doc resume is the traditional one that you're used to seeing. The PDF is a particularly valuable tool if you're uploading a resume that will be read on an iPhone or a smartphone or an iPad. Many people are not aware that the majority of companies now use applicant tracking system software, otherwise known as the ATS. If you're submitting your resume online, then you're definitely dealing with an ATS. The ATS is a software application that enables the electronic handling of recruitment needs. Unfortunately, there are over 300 ATS applications, which make it virtually impossible to know exactly how to work with it. The biggest challenge for a resume writer is to create a document that appeals to the human eye, but also conforms to the ATS. ATS applications allow companies to specify keywords that then allow them to rank candidates. From that ranking, they typically call the top 5 to 20% of resumes to review, and from there determine which candidates to extend interviews. Incorrect formatting can cause the applicant tracking system apps to be unable to read your resume. So the templates that I offer are as ATS compliant as possible, but beware that not all of the templates available on the internet that you come across are compliant. You don't have a chance at that job if your non-compliant resume is kicked out from the get-go. And by the way, companies do not notify you when this occurs. There are applications out there that claim to be able to scan your resume for keywords, and buyer beware. Generally, they are scams that honestly don't help you at all. Before we move on to CVs and social media, I don't want to neglect the importance of including a cover letter when you send out your resume. It's interesting because studies indicate that only 25% of hiring managers actually look at cover letters, but you cannot take the chance that your hiring manager is in the 75% where it doesn't matter, so include it. This can also be an email if you're submitting your resume electronically. Also, remember that anytime you meet with a hiring manager, you should also send a thank you note as a follow-up. It's another opportunity to stand out among all the people that are applying. Next, let's talk about curriculum vitae, otherwise known as CVs. Curriculum vitae is Latin for courses of your life. In Europe, all resumes are referred to as a CV, but in the US, there is a clear distinction between a resume and a CV. And yes, you definitely need both. Your CV is your running job history. It is not a marketing tool. A CV calls for just the facts. A good reason to keep your CV up to date is that it makes the task of creating a resume for a specific job infinitely easier. You'll have all the details available to create your marketing document, your resume. Let's look again at the differences between a resume and a CV. There are people that inadvertently request your CV when actually the document that they want is your resume and vice versa. If you sent your CV to apply for a job, your achievements would not be noted. If you sent your resume in as part of your bio for a speaking engagement, you would be leaving out the scope of your career. If there is confusion confusion regarding which document is being requested, always clarify. Some people just don't know the difference, and that includes hiring managers at times. So remember, when you're applying in a non-academic setting, you use a resume. When you're applying for an academic setting, you want to use your CV. A resume should be altered for each position that you're applying for in order to emphasize particular skills for that job, whereas a CV is not altered for the position. In a resume, you want to be clear and concise and generally have a 1 to 2 page document. A CV is as long as it needs to be to include all your information. A resume focuses on the last 10 years of your work experience, whereas a CV goes back all the way to your undergraduate experience. These are the components that are generally included in a CV. Many of them are also in a resume, but a CV is definitely more detailed and complex. Do not worry if you do not have any accomplishments in a particular area. Just leave that out. Theoretically, CVs do not include a branding statement, but I've found that it is helpful to include it when submitting my CV for speaking engagements. I do have CV templates available on my website that give examples of how to create your CV if you need further information. Let's move on next to social media. 90% of hiring managers state that they will be checking you out on social media. They will Google you, and they also have access to apps that track your email address and allow them to find you on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and numerous other sites. With that said, it's vital to know how you're represented on social media. You need to check out what hiring managers might find out about you. If you do need to scrub your social media presence, you may need to actually partner with a company that specializes in helping you clean things up. Don't forget to Google yourself on Google Images. You never know who may have tagged you in a photo. One of the biggest areas of conflict that I've seen with social media are discrepancies between resumes and LinkedIn profiles. Hiring managers will catch that. Make sure that your dates and job experiences align. Always be truthful. Stretching the truth will always end up getting you in trouble. As healthcare providers, we're well schooled about HIPAA and potential violations, but you also need to be really careful about what you post, even in closed groups. You never know who may be a member. As we wrap up, I want to address the question of what do you do if you're overwhelmed regarding creating your career documents and professional identity. Hopefully this tutorial has helped you to understand and respond to many of the challenges and get you started. But if you find that you need more help, I've created templates and an ebook that go into more detail on my website. There are times, though, that you will truly benefit from hiring a professional to assist you with your career documents. If you have challenging circumstances, such as job gaps or your career changer, then you're likely to require more assistance than using the do-it-yourself approach. My recommendation is to do your homework and research the companies and professionals that are available on the web. There are many reputable and experienced career professionals out there, but there are also ones that are a scam. So what do you need to look for to avoid wasting your money and ending up with documents that will not help you in your career search? My ears tend to perk up when I see offers that are always too good to be true. A good resume should take a writer at least 4 to 6 hours, or frequently more, to create the document. So if they're charging you $49, you're likely getting a prefab product. All of those websites that offer free resume templates are tempting, but they all come with hidden costs, and many of them crank out resumes that are obviously generic. Like I said, low prices, quick turnaround times, no actual contact with your writer, and recruiters questioning your keyword analysis scores so that they can rope you into rewriting your resume are all big red flags. You do want to make sure that your writer is certified by a national resume writing organization. In summary, your professional identity is something you need to maintain and to cultivate. We've covered a lot of material in a short amount of time, but now you're prepared to get started with creating your professional identity. You never know when an amazing opportunity is going to arise, and you want to be ready to present yourself in the best light possible. Wouldn't you rather focus on your new opportunity instead of struggling to create documents you wish that you had at the ready? If you need further help, I have created a number of products to help you create the documents that you need. So I hope that you will investigate DIY career documents for healthcare professionals. Please let me know how I can help you. And lastly, thank you for your time, and I really am wishing you every success in your career.